Radio Cairo English International Service presentes Special Program COP27 Egypt 2022.
I'm Jim Brown from Scotland, and I present the speech by Ahmed Shawky Al-Attar on the importance of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which will take place in the city of Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, from November the 6th until the 18th, 2002. Here is the speech. Welcome. I am honoured to have this dialogue with the Brazilian programme of Radio Cairo, and the opportunity to have our voice heard from Africa and the Arab regions by the peoples and governments of South America. I am Ahmed Shawky Al-Attar, an Egyptian investigative journalist specialising in terrorism and climate issues. I am the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the ethnic Rose Elyoussef magazine, as well as founder and Editor-in-Chief of Ozone platform specialised in climate change. Our objective in creating the Ozone platform website was to promote the awareness of the causes and risk of sudden climate change in our region, which is one of the most affected, but is the region that has the least access to this vital information. Our proposal is to provide in-depth media coverage to make the information and data related to climate issues available to the Arab public and the entire region. Through a parallel project, the Arab Network for Environment and Climate Press is to train press and media teams in environmental journalism to cover climate issues professionally. In all our current and future projects, we have acted on a set of specific principles. Climate justice being the most significant of all is the foundation from which we go forward in our climate journalism. There is no doubt that climate change crisis is the defining issue of our time, and we are at a crucial moment. The global impacts of climate change are wide-ranging and unprecedented in scale, from changing weather patterns that threaten food production to rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic floods. This in addition to the indirect effects and losses which cannot yet be foreseen. Climate change will indirectly affect global water security and may cause displacement, migration, conflict and other severe events. Getting rid of fossil fuels has now become a matter of life and death for the entire world. Our environment and the planet will collapse completely. We will enter the scope of the catastrophic warming scenarios. Adapting to these effects of climate change needs drastic actions now, otherwise it will be far more difficult and costly in future. The continent of Africa is one of the regions in the world most affected by the negative effects of climate change, although its carbon emissions are almost negligible. COP27 is Africa's voice to the world, especially the rich countries who have yet to fulfil their financing commitments to development, as well as for the poor countries affected by climate change. The African group's choice of Egypt to host the next climate change summit was brought about by the knowledge that Egypt has the diplomatic negotiating expertise to enable her to influence this to achieve the goals of the continent during the upcoming conference. In addition to Egypt's role in the sustainable development process in African countries and the ability to unite them behind a specific and clear agenda for the case of loss and damage. I hope that the Egyptian people will embrace the issues of climate change in future, taking advantage of the opportunity in the upcoming conference to understand its role in facing this global crisis. I'd like to send a message to COP27 participants to unite together and to face the global crisis, support the countries severely affected by climate change, advance issues of financing for weak and developing countries because it is a matter of life and death for poor people. I'd also like to thank the Radio Cairo team for their interest in this crucial issue, their keenness to convey the voices of developing peoples who are facing this crisis with few possibilities. Inshallah.
To the listeners of Radio Cairo, I am Nicole Jungo El-Najjar from the Canary Islands, and I present Amyra El-Khalili's speech on COP27, taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh from November 6 to 18, 2022. We, who are representatives of popular organizations in Latin America and the Caribbean, hope that at COP27, Egypt and its people will welcome and support us to reflect on the climate crisis, its structural causes and its consequences in order to promote effective actions to build climate justice. The year in which Rio 92 was organized, the first United Nations conference in which the issue of the climate crisis was discussed at a high level, seems distant. Although we have already denounced and warned about the consequences of global warming on our ecosystem and the risk to the survival of life on our planet, the necessary measures for its mitigation were not implemented by governments and corporations, which ignored and neglected the effects of sudden climate change. 30 years after that first conference in Brazil, today we can see the current global climate scenario absolutely tragic. Millions of species disappearing, large growth in the displacement of populations affected by climate extremes, our very survival as people and as a species is at risk. We have a clear understanding of the potential extent of this climate crisis and what needs to be done to address it effectively. It is indisputable that climate change is a consequence of human actions as a result of the capitalist model that is highly consuming natural resources such as water, energy, biodiversity, among others, and the dispute over land use and ownership, already proven to exhaustion by hundreds of scientific researchers. The planet catches fire, floods, dries up, and all living beings face conditions incompatible with life. All of this is increasing in the context of an aggravated situation of democratic crisis and serious violations of human and fundamental rights on all continents. Our populations are the least responsible, but our territories are the most affected by the crisis. Especially serious is the threat to life in small island states in the Caribbean, such as the islands of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which could see a large part of their territory disappear with the rise in sea levels and the blows of recurring and increasingly intense amid successive international crises, including the ongoing food security crisis, desertification, and water scarcity. Africa and the entire Middle East are also being violently affected, as we can see by the climate apartheid against the Palestinian people. In this meeting, which will bring together government stakeholders and civil society organizations. We call, through our international networks, to all social movements and organizations in all areas of resistance and struggle in Latin America and the Caribbean, from Egypt, to join the cause of climate justice, not to remain indifferent to actions that jeopardize common goods, such as the climate and water, wherever it is found, whether on the surface, underground, or snowy peaks, or at the Earth's poles. Our call is for a commitment to the radical transformation of this economic financial system, with concrete proposals that vehemently reject the false solutions in these political agreements between parties, as if the financial market had the competence to save us from the climate crisis, when it is precisely responsible for this crisis, for to exchange it for another model that is socially just, politically participatory and integrated, based on respect for all living beings that share life on the planet, taking care of present and future generation. We take this opportunity to thank our host and the entire Radio Cairo team for this dialogue that allows us to unify our networks with the traditional Arab hospitality that is peculiar to us at COP27. Alhamdulillah. Amyra El-Khalili.